Ferrari is in crisis, as a huge drop in stock makes a big change. Alonso has addressed retirement talks, and Oscar receives praise from a surprising person. Let's get into the latest F1 news. Ferrari just suffered their worst stock market crash since going public in 2015, and the reason why will shock you. When one of the world's most prestigious brands loses 15% of its value in a single day, something has gone seriously wrong behind those iconic red doors. Picture this. You're an investor who put your money into Ferrari, expecting the prancing horse to gallop toward glory. Instead, you watched your investment plummet faster than a Formula One car hitting the barriers. This isn't just about numbers on a screen. This is about one of motorsport's greatest dynasties facing a crisis that threatens everything they've built. The carnage began during Ferrari's Capital Markets Day presentation, where they unveiled their financial roadmap to 2030. On paper, the numbers looked impressive. Revenue projections climbing from current levels to over $10 billion by the end of the decade. But Wall Street saw something different entirely, something that sent shockwaves through both the automotive and racing communities. Here's what really happened. Ferrari announced they expect to generate around $8 billion in revenue this year, with ambitious plans to reach $10.4 billion by 2030. They also projected minimum adjusted earnings of $4.2 billion by that same timeline. These figures should have excited investors, but instead triggered the largest single-day sell-off in Ferrari's public trading history. The New York Stock Exchange witnessed a brutal 15% drop in Ferrari's share price, while the Italian exchange saw an even more devastating 16% peak decline. These weren't just bad numbers. They represented record-breaking losses that wiped billions off the company's market value in hours. But why did investors react so harshly to what seemed like positive growth projections? The answer lies in the gap between expectations and reality. Wall Street had been anticipating even more aggressive targets, and Ferrari's conservative approach suggested underlying challenges that the company wasn't fully addressing in their public statements. The timing couldn't be worse for Ferrari's reputation. While their hypercar division celebrates 3 consecutive victories at the legendary Le Mans endurance race, their Formula One program has become a source of frustration and embarrassment. The team hasn't secured a podium finish in 5 consecutive races, a streak that would have been unthinkable during their dominant years. Adding salt to the wound is the underwhelming performance of Lewis Hamilton, the 7-time world champion who joined Ferrari with enormous fanfare and expectations. His first season wearing the iconic red has been marked by disappointments rather than the victories fans desperately hope to see. Hamilton's struggles symbolize Ferrari's broader inability to translate their engineering excellence into racing success. Chairman John Elkann found himself in damage control mode, making an emotional appeal that revealed the personal stakes involved. He described his commitment to Ferrari as more than professional obligation, calling it a lifelong passion that drives every decision he makes. His words carried the weight of someone who understands that Ferrari represents more than just another luxury car manufacturer. Elkann emphasized his role as president, majority shareholder, and passionate advocate for preserving Ferrari's unique position in the automotive world. He spoke directly to the Ferrari faithful, acknowledging their dreams and expectations while promising that every strategic choice would strengthen rather than compromise the brand's legendary status. The chairman's statement also addressed the elephant in the room, Formula One performance. He explicitly acknowledged the success in endurance racing while admitting that Formula One results have fallen short of both company and fan expectations. This honest assessment demonstrated awareness of the problem, but also highlighted how far Ferrari has fallen from their championship-winning days. CEO Benedetto Vigna reinforced this message with equally direct language about Formula One obligations. He stated that winning isn't just a goal but a responsibility the company owes to loyal fans worldwide. His words carried an almost desperate urgency, suggesting that internal pressure to deliver results has reached critical levels. The broader context makes Ferrari's situation even more precarious. They haven't won a Formula One Constructors' Championship since 2008, and their last driver's champion was Kimi Räikkönen back in 2007. Nearly 2 decades without a world title represents an unprecedented drought for a team that once dominated the sport with legendary drivers and innovative engineering. This extended championship absence has created mounting pressure from multiple directions. Shareholders demand return on investment, Fans expect competitive racing, and the company's premium brand positioning requires success on the world's biggest motorsport stage. The stock market crash suggests that patience among financial stakeholders has reached its breaking point. Ferrari now faces a critical crossroads where financial performance and racing success have become inseparably linked. The company must prove they can translate their engineering capabilities and brand prestige into consistent Formula One victories while simultaneously meeting aggressive revenue growth targets. The market's brutal reaction sends a clear message. Investors want results, not just promises. Ferrari's leadership must deliver both championship-caliber racing performance and sustainable financial growth to restore confidence and justify their premium market position in an increasingly competitive global landscape. What if I told you that one of Formula One's biggest power dynamics might be about to explode? And it involves George Russell potentially cutting ties with the most influential team boss in the sport. This story has everything: contract drama, behind-the-scenes tension, and a relationship that could reshape Mercedes forever. Right now, George Russell finds himself in the most peculiar position of his career. He's delivering his strongest Formula One season yet, with spectacular wins in Canada and Singapore, yet he's still without a contract for next year. But here's where it gets really interesting. Six-time Grand Prix winner Ralf Schumacher just dropped a bombshell that nobody saw coming. According to Schumacher, Russell might be ready to completely restructure his relationship with Mercedes boss Toto Wolff. We're talking about potentially ending an advisory partnership that's been central to Russell's career since his junior days. This isn't just about money or contract terms. This is about respect, trust, and the future direction of one of Formula One's most successful partnerships. Let me paint you the picture of what makes this situation so unique. Most Formula One drivers have management teams completely separate from their racing teams. It's a clean division. Your manager fights for your interests, while the team focuses on performance. But Russell's situation is different. As a graduate of the Mercedes Junior program, his career has been overseen directly by the team and by Wolff personally. It's an arrangement that's worked brilliantly until now. The cracks started showing during the summer when Mercedes was openly flirting with Max Verstappen. While the team was publicly courting the Red Bull champion, Russell found himself in an awkward position. Imagine being one of the sport's rising stars, delivering exceptional performances, only to watch your own team boss publicly chase another driver. That's got to sting. Schumacher believes this is exactly what created the tension. He suggests that Russell felt pushed aside during Mercedes' very public pursuit of Verstappen. Think about it from Russell's perspective. You're giving everything to the team, winning races, and then you see headlines every week about your boss trying to poach your potential replacement. That's not exactly the confidence boost any driver wants. The Singapore Grand Prix weekend appears to have been the turning point. Schumacher noticed something was off when Wolff canceled a scheduled interview at short notice after qualifying. The experienced observer sensed unrest between Russell and Mercedes, describing the British driver as being not in a good mood on Saturday. But here's where the story takes an interesting twist. Schumacher believes that by Sunday, an agreement had been reached. Wolff's sudden willingness to confirm both drivers would remain with Mercedes suggested the negotiations had concluded successfully. However, the terms of that agreement might include a significant change in the Russell-Wolff dynamic. The rumor that's now circulating suggests Russell no longer wants Wolff serving as his advisor in any capacity. This would represent a fundamental shift in how their relationship operates. Russell would maintain his racing contract with Mercedes while severing the personal advisory connection that's guided his career progression. This potential change raises fascinating questions about power dynamics in Formula One. Wolff has been instrumental in shaping Russell's career, guiding him through the junior categories and into his current position as Mercedes' leading driver. But maybe Russell has outgrown that relationship. Maybe he wants the independence that comes with having completely external management. The timing of all this is particularly intriguing. Russell is having his best season yet, proving he can win races and compete at the highest level. He's no longer the promising junior who needs constant guidance, essay. He's a proven race winner who might want more control over his career decisions. This could be his declaration of independence. From Wolff's perspective, this must be a complex situation to navigate. He's invested years in developing Russell's career, and now he might need to step back from that advisory role while maintaining their professional racing relationship. It's like being asked to change from mentor to employer, which requires a completely different dynamic. What makes this even more compelling is how both parties are handling it publicly. Despite the rumored tension, Wolff continues to praise Russell's performances. After the Singapore victory, he was effusive in his compliments, describing Russell as formidable and noting how he hasn't seen mistakes from the British driver this season. Russell, meanwhile, has been professional about the contract negotiations, recently hinting that good things take time and it's all about getting the details right. But those details might include this fundamental restructuring of his relationship with Wolff. The broader implications for Mercedes are significant too. If Russell does move forward with external management, it could signal a new era for how the team handles driver relationships. It might also influence how future Mercedes drivers structure their career management. This situation perfectly illustrates how Formula One operates on multiple levels. There's the on-track performance we all see, but behind the scenes, there are complex relationships, power dynamics, and career considerations that can be just as dramatic as any race weekend battle. Whether Russell ultimately severs his advisory relationship with Wolff remains to be seen, but the mere possibility shows how the sport's power structures can evolve. Sometimes the most significant changes happen not in the cockpit, but in the boardroom negotiations that shape careers and define futures. What happens when a Formula One driver speaks too honestly about his team? Well, we're about to find out, because Charles Leclerc just found himself in hot water with Ferrari's engineering department, and the fallout could reshape how we think about driver-team relationships in the sport. Picture this scenario. You've just finished 6th in a race where you expected to compete for podium positions. Your teammate ended up 8th. Your car had braking problems throughout the entire event. The media surrounds you, cameras rolling, and they ask about your team's performance. What do you say? Most drivers would give the standard corporate response about working harder and believing in the team. Charles Leclerc chose a different path entirely. His brutally honest assessment after the Singapore Grand Prix has reportedly left Ferrari engineers feeling betrayed and questioning their relationship with their star driver. The Monegasque driver didn't mince words when describing Ferrari's current predicament. He painted a picture of a team that has been left behind by their competitors, stuck in a performance gap that seems impossible to bridge. According to reports from respected Italian motorsport publications, Leclerc suggested that McLaren, Red Bull, and Mercedes have formed an elite group at the front of the grid, leaving Ferrari as mere observers in their own championship fight. But here's where things get really interesting. The engineering staff at Maranello apparently didn't appreciate this public diagnosis of their work. Sources indicate that some team members feel Leclerc crossed a line with his uncompromising criticism of both the car's performance and the team's management approach. Think about the psychology at play here. Engineers pour their hearts and souls into developing these machines. They work countless hours, sacrifice time with their families, and dedicate their careers to making their car faster. Then their own driver essentially tells the world that their efforts aren't good enough to compete with the opposition. That has to sting. Leclerc's assessment was particularly damaging because of its finality. He didn't suggest that Ferrari was close to a breakthrough or that better days were coming. Instead, he indicated that the performance picture seen in Singapore would define the remainder of their season. For a team with Ferrari's proud history and massive resources, such a verdict from their lead driver represents more than just criticism. It's almost a declaration of defeat. The timing couldn't be worse for Ferrari either. They're currently locked in an intense battle for second place in the Constructors' Championship. Mercedes recently overtook them following George Russell's victory in Singapore, opening up a 27-point gap. Every race matters enormously in this fight, not just for pride, but for the substantial prize money and prestige that comes with finishing ahead of your rivals. What makes this situation even more complex is that Leclerc wasn't entirely wrong in his assessment. Ferrari has indeed struggled to match the pace of the leading teams consistently. They've gone 5 consecutive races without securing a podium finish, a drought that would have been unthinkable for the Scuderia just a few years ago. The technical challenges they've faced, including the braking issues that plagued both drivers in Singapore, suggest deeper problems within their development program. However, Ferrari team principal Fred Vasseur offered a notably different perspective on the situation. While acknowledging the team's frustrations, He suggested that the raw pace exists within their package, but they're failing to extract maximum performance when it counts. This creates an interesting dynamic, where the team leadership maintains optimism while their star driver expresses pessimism. The broader implications of this conflict extend far beyond one weekend's results. Formula One teams rely heavily on internal cohesion and shared belief in their mission. When cracks appear in that unity, particularly between drivers and technical staff, it can create a downward spiral that becomes increasingly difficult to reverse. Consider how this affects day-to-day operations at Ferrari. Engineers who feel criticized by their driver might become less willing to take risks or push boundaries in their development work. Communication channels could become strained, with technical feedback meetings turning into defensive sessions rather than collaborative problem-solving opportunities. For Leclerc personally, this situation presents a significant challenge. He's positioning himself as Ferrari's future leader, especially with Lewis Hamilton joining the team next season. Alienating key technical personnel at this crucial juncture could undermine his authority and influence within the organization. The incident also highlights a fundamental tension in modern Formula One. Drivers are expected to be both honest ambassadors for their sport and loyal team players. Social media and constant press coverage mean that every comment gets amplified and analyzed. Finding the right balance between authenticity and diplomacy becomes increasingly difficult. Looking ahead, how Ferrari resolves this internal friction could determine their trajectory for the remainder of this season and beyond. Teams that allow such conflicts to fester often find themselves trapped in cycles of underperformance and recrimination. The real test will come in the next few races. Can Ferrari's engineers channel their frustration into improved performance? Will Leclerc moderate his public statements while maintaining his competitive drive? The answers to these questions might just determine whether Ferrari can salvage their championship aspirations, or if this Singapore controversy becomes the moment when their season truly fell apart. What if I told you that one of Formula One's greatest champions just revealed he might walk away from the sport at the peak of his powers? Fernando Alonso, the two-time world champion who's been racing at the highest level for over 2 decades, has just made some absolutely fascinating comments about his future that have left the entire paddock scratching their heads. Here's the twist that nobody saw coming. While most drivers would want to continue racing if they were having their best season, Alonso has suggested the complete opposite. He's hinted that if 2026 turns out to be a brilliant year for him and Aston Martin, that might actually be the perfect time to hang up his helmet forever. Now, before you think this sounds completely backwards, let me paint you the full picture of what's happening here. We're talking about a driver who, at 43 years old, genuinely believes he's performing better than he ever has in his entire career. This isn't just confidence talking. This is a man who's been analyzing his own performance with the precision of a surgeon. Think about that for a moment. Fernando Alonso has raced wheel to wheel with legends like Michael Schumacher, battled Lewis Hamilton in their explosive McLaren partnership, fought Max Verstappen in recent seasons, and competed across multiple generations of Formula One. Yet he's sitting here telling us that his driving right now surpasses everything he's achieved before. What makes this even more remarkable is the context. Aston Martin hasn't exactly been setting the world on fire lately. They're not fighting for wins or podiums consistently. Yet Alonso feels he's extracting more from these cars than would have been possible 20 years ago. He's developed this incredible ability to work with his engineers, understand tire management across different compounds, and handle scenarios that he's faced countless times before. But here's where his retirement philosophy becomes absolutely fascinating. Most athletes want to go out on top, right? Win the championship and ride off into the sunset. Alonso's thinking runs deeper than that. He's basically saying that if everything clicks in 2026, if the new regulations favor Aston Martin, if he's winning races, and maybe even fighting for a third world championship, that would be the perfect moment to step away. The psychology behind this is brilliant. He doesn't want to be that driver who hangs around too long, who starts showing signs of decline, who becomes a shadow of their former self. He wants his final memory in Formula One to be standing on the top step of the podium, champagne flowing, having proven once again that he belongs among the very best. Aston Martin's team principal, Andy Cowell, understands this mentality completely, though you can tell he's not thrilled about potentially losing such an asset. Cowell knows that Alonso brings something to the team that you simply cannot replace. It's not just his speed on track, it's his ability to develop the car, guide the younger drivers, and provide feedback that helps shape their 2026 Challenger. The timing of these comments is particularly intriguing, because we're on the brink of massive regulation changes in Formula One. The 2026 season will introduce new technical rules that could completely shake up the competitive order. Teams that are struggling now might suddenly find themselves at the front, while current powerhouses could fall back. Alonso has lived through enough regulation changes to know that success is never guaranteed. He remembers when traction control was banned, and everyone said it would reward pure driving skill, only to see Red Bull dominate through superior aerodynamics. He's seen how one team can find a loophole or develop a breakthrough that makes their car half a second faster than everyone else's. This experience has taught him that no matter how skillful you are as a driver, if your car isn't competitive, you're fighting an uphill battle. But it's also shown him that when everything aligns, when you have the right car beneath you and the experience to maximize its potential, magic can happen. The fascinating part about Alonso's current situation is that he's racing without pressure. He's already achieved everything he needed to prove in Formula One. 2 world championships, victories with multiple teams, respect from every driver on the grid. He doesn't need to race to validate his legacy anymore. This freedom has actually made him more dangerous as a competitor. When you're not desperate for results, when you're genuinely enjoying the process of racing and car development, you often perform at your highest level. There's no tension, no fear of failure, just pure focus on extracting every tenth of a second from the machinery. What makes his potential retirement even more poignant is the knowledge that Formula One will lose something irreplaceable when he eventually steps away. We're watching one of the last connections to a different era of the sport. A driver who learned his craft when the cars were more analog, when driver's skill could make a bigger difference. The question now becomes whether Aston Martin can give him that fairy tale ending he's envisioning. With Adrian Newey joining their technical team and significant investment in their infrastructure, they're certainly positioning themselves for success. If they can nail the 2026 regulations and provide Alonso with a championship-winning car, we might witness one of the most perfect endings in sporting history. Whether Fernando Alonso retires after 2026 or continues racing, one thing is certain. We're currently watching a master craftsman at the absolute peak of his powers, and that's something truly special to behold. Imagine being so angry at Formula One officials that you still can't let it go 3 years later. Well, that's exactly where we find Guenther Steiner today, and honestly, his latest outburst might be the most entertaining thing to come out of F1 this week. So here's what happened. After the Singapore Grand Prix, some fans started throwing around conspiracy theories about British bias when Lando Norris was allowed to continue racing with a damaged front wing. Instead of getting the dreaded black and orange flag that would force him to pit, Norris cruised to a podium finish. Sounds suspicious? Well, Steiner has something to say about that. The former Haas team principal went absolutely nuclear on a podcast recently, and trust me, you're going to want to hear this story. But first, let me set the scene for you. Picture this. Singapore 2025. Lando Norris makes contact with Max Verstappen at the start, picks up some front wing damage, but keeps racing. The stewards don't call him in. He finishes third. Meanwhile, 3 years ago in the exact same race, Kevin Magnussen had almost identical damage and was immediately black flagged, ruining his entire race. Now, you might think this smells fishy, especially when you consider that Norris is British and racing for a British team. But Steiner? He's laughing at that theory, and he's got receipts. Here's where things get juicy. Steiner reveals that back in 2022, there was a race director who was absolutely obsessed with car parts. This guy would black flag drivers for the tiniest bit of damage, even when teams explained that the parts were engineered not to fall off. Steiner describes him as someone you simply couldn't reason with, someone who would just say he's the race director and do whatever he thought was right. But here's the kicker. This same overzealous race director, he mysteriously disappeared from Formula One after just a handful of races. Coincidence? Steiner doesn't think so. The plot thickens when Steiner brings up Fernando Alonso. Remember when Alonso's rearview mirror was literally hanging off his car, flapping in the wind? According to the old standards, that should have been an immediate black flag. A loose mirror is arguably more dangerous than a slightly damaged front wing flap. Yet somehow, Alonso was allowed to continue racing. What changed? Well, according to Steiner, FIA President Mohammed Ben Sulayem got involved and the rules were adjusted to be more sensible. Teams know how wings are constructed. They use materials like Xylon that don't just break apart unless you literally cut them with a knife. But here's where Steiner gets really fired up. He claims that Haas lost points multiple times because of this particular race director's strict interpretation of the rules. Meanwhile, other drivers with arguably more dangerous damage were given free passes. The inconsistency was driving him absolutely crazy. Steiner's theory is simple. The current approach is way more logical. Teams are responsible for their cars, they understand the engineering, and race directors now make more informed decisions about what actually constitutes a safety risk. And here's the part that had me rolling. Steiner jokes that Lando Norris should actually thank him for all his complaining back in 2022 because it helped get rid of the problematic race director. Without Steiner's vocal protests, Norris might have been forced to change his front wing in Singapore and lost that podium. The irony is delicious. The same guy who was furious about inconsistent flag decisions 3 years ago is now defending why those same decisions are being made differently today. But his point makes sense. The old system was broken, overly punitive, and often applied inconsistently. What's fascinating is how this whole saga reveals the behind-the-scenes politics of Formula One. Race directors don't just disappear quietly. When someone gets removed from such a high-profile position after only a few races, there are usually serious reasons. Steiner's account suggests that multiple teams were frustrated with the inconsistent application of safety regulations. The technical aspect is interesting too. Modern Formula One cars are marvels of engineering. Carbon fiber components are designed with specific failure modes in mind. Teams spend millions ensuring that parts either stay attached or fail in predictable ways. When engineers tell race officials that a particular piece of damage isn't dangerous, they're usually right. But the real story here isn't about damaged wings or safety flags. It's about how Formula One's governance evolved between 2022 and 2025. We've seen a shift from rigid rule interpretation to more nuanced decision-making. Race directors now seem to consider the actual engineering realities rather than applying blanket policies. Steiner's outburst also highlights something deeper about Formula One culture. These guys hold grudges forever. 3 years later, he's still mad about losing points due to what he considers unfair officiating. But his anger led to positive change. Sometimes you need someone willing to make noise to fix broken systems. The British bias angle is particularly interesting because it shows how quickly conspiracy theories can take hold in Formula One. When fans see inconsistencies, they look for patterns that might not actually exist. Sometimes the explanation is much simpler. Sometimes it's just that the officials learned from past mistakes and started making better decisions. Looking forward, this whole episode might actually be good news for Formula One. If race directors are now making more informed, consistent decisions about safety issues, that benefits everyone. Drivers get to race, teams don't lose points unfairly, and fans get better competition. So next time you see a driver continuing with minor damage, remember Guenther Steiner's crusade. Sometimes the squeaky wheel really does get the grease, even if it takes 3 years and a podcast rant to get proper credit for it.